shades of leadership. The three characteristics that I usually talk about are clarity, courage, and conviction. So when you know who you are and you have the courage to stand up and be that person, and the conviction that comes with believing in yourself beyond a shadow of a doubt, what you have to offer, and that you're valuable beyond measure, when you can stand in that place, the game changes. It becomes a totally different thing. How do you get there, though? How do you get there? Over the years, in working with my clients, I came up with a couple different ideas. And one of them is really exploring the voices in my head. Because at some point when I was really exploring, looking for my own true voice, what is that? What does it sound like? How do I express that in the world? I kept hearing all these other voices. How many of you have those? Those little voices, right? And you're like, shut up, like, what is that? So I started to explore, if I wasn't listening to those little voices, what voice am I listening to? Where does it come from? And how do I listen to it even more? And so I came up with this way of thinking about it, the internal leadership team, and we all have it. So just imagine that you have a boardroom within you. Maybe it looks a little bit like the boardroom on this slide. And around this table, so there's a chair at the other end of the table. You're here. There's seats on either side. And in those chairs are what I call the middle managers. They're the little voices of fear and doubt and shame and guilt, criticism and judgment. They've been with you since the day you were born. And they're an unruly bunch, they're always wreaking havoc, they're always trying to, upset things. But those guys, they're really just trying to get three things. They're trying to get love, security, and self-esteem. Well, how do they do that? They try to look good, stay safe, and fit in, no matter what. Here's the other thing about them. They're always looking for a problem. They're always looking for what's wrong. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with them? What's wrong with this? What's wrong with you? On the other side of the table, I call this your most trusted advisor. And the most trusted advisor is your inner voice. Your inner voice. Your inner voice, really, honestly, it's the voice of God. It's the voice of your soul, of your spirit, your higher self, whatever fits for you. I'm just going to use God. And it speaks to us through our intuition. It speaks to us through our innate knowing. And each one of us is designed a little bit differently to listen to that. The thing about our inner voice is that it's not trying to get love, security, or self-esteem. It is love, security, and self-esteem. It is that. You were born with it. We forgot. Now we are the CEO in this little boardroom. We're the chief executive officer, which means that we act on the directives that we receive from our board. So if we're listening to those little voices, guess what kind of results you're going to get? Fear-based ones, jealousy, compare and despair. That place where you go on Facebook and you're like, oh my God, everybody is doing the coolest stuff and I totally suck. See, we are validation-seeking missiles. Human beings are validation-seeking missiles. This is how it works. This is how your reality is created. Whatever your subconscious mind thinks and believes, you will find evidence for it. Period. So if you're afraid of something, what you resist persists, that whole saying? Yeah, it'll show up. If shit's showing up in your life, that's what's in your head. If we think the world is a beautiful, positive place, we will find evidence for it everywhere. We will. Because we're coming from that inner voice place. Let's just look a little bit at those three qualities I was talking about earlier. So clarity, the clarity of who are you? Who are you anyway? This chart actually This is something that I do with my clients. It's called a human design reading. The human design is cool because it really looks at how are you literally designed. And in my mind, I look at how are you literally designed to express your purpose in the world and listen to your inner voice. So that's how I use it. And it's really, who are you? What's your genius? What are you uniquely designed to do? What's your secret sauce? Courage. How can you keep moving forward? How, when you are scared out of those britches, how do you keep moving forward? Do you have the courage to still shine, to still move forward? Because I think that's where a lot of people stop. And I think that's where a lot of women stop. And that takes vulnerability. What is the power of a woman? It's in our vulnerability. That's what makes women amazing leaders. It's our ability to be vulnerable and to connect emotionally with other women. It's also our downfall. It's also the thing that makes us kind of lousy leaders, because we get all in the drama, or we can. And the other part of that is that feeling that we can be on an emotional roller coaster. So we have to negotiate this vulnerability between allowing ourselves to be vulnerable and open and receptive, and yet at the same time not take on everybody else's stuff. It's about that vulnerability and being able to soften, and yet at the same time recognize that in that softness is great power. This is my darling child. The reason I have this picture up here is because it's around conviction. It's like, what would you be willing to risk everything for? And so just a little background history. My son, who's 9.5, I had him by C-section, and that was not intended. And I was like, I'm not having another baby. There's no way. Because I was not going to do that again. I was not going back to the hospital. And yet I always felt like somebody was floating around. Our family was incomplete. And it was this little gal who really wanted to come in. So I get pregnant, and I'm like, I'm having her at home. And I knew, as sure as I'm standing here right now, that I had to do this. I can't tell you how I know, but I know it's going to be okay. So I had her at home, and it was awesome, and it was the most healing, amazing experience of my entire life. And I was willing to risk it all because I knew she needed to be born that way. I needed it too. And that belief, no one could take that from me. And when I brought that forward into my business, that's when really things started to change. You can have that too. So this thought leader creation turnaround is something that I do with my clients. I teach it. It's just like this fast little thing. This is how you connect to your inner voice. So it's stop, ground, surround, intend, and act. You are enough. And that in order to be a really, truly powerful leader, you've got to allow yourself to be vulnerable to it. And that the only person that you need, or voice you need to surrender to, is no one outside you, but surrendering to your inner voice and speaking and living and creating your life from that place will change everything. So thank you.